Hi, this is János, it's Real World Audio, and let's talk about Lowther drivers. What is Lowther? Here you go. In Paul's comment, he is sharing his experience with his own speakers, with Lowther drivers, and I thank you, Paul, for sharing it. And I just like to also focus on your experience and share my experience with it, and just show people I'm also using your experiences to demonstrate that what I'm saying is not just my observation alone, but people who have Lowthers, this is generally observed. And so what Paul was sharing with us is that he has a void pipe, just an amazing 3.5 meter folded pipe. That's fantastic. And for those of you who were wondering what is the low frequency extension of a void pipe, it is defined by how long the pipe is. So 3.5 meter long pipes, they can go down like subterranean. So they can really go down easily to 20 hertz, provided that you also have a long enough room to let them breathe. And so what Paul shared with us was that with the Lowthers he experienced that, how did he put it? That when he changed them to these drivers, the SB Acoustics driver, I'm going to have a look at this in a while, which are not as efficient, but they are more balanced, they have more bass, great imaging, fast, but not as fast as the Lowthers. However, the wider bandwidth is a better trade-off. So basically, we have different strengths for different types of drivers. And this is also what I have experienced. Paul, I have the exact same experience as you did, is that Lowthers have that extreme speed. And it's like super fast. So it's kind of like really like hearing sound at the speed of sound. That's kind of like the impression we get. And that's like an acoustic mirage we always get when there's much more high frequencies than mid-range and bass. And also you can get this effect as well if you have like really small drivers, tiny drivers, but in a cabinet that cannot reproduce low frequencies. So with my Lagrands or Monsieur Hiraga's Le Petit, you won't observe this effect because these speakers, despite the tiny driver, go down to surprisingly low frequencies, which is not typical of the cabinets you find. So, like 99% of the tiny cabinet, I mean tiny driver size speakers, you won't have any bass at all. It's just like lots of high frequencies, mid-range, and then plummets to zero, like nothing below 100 hertz. That's kind of typical. And if there is something below 100 hertz, usually there's some gimmicks associated with it. And or not, but if you want usually to get the best of tiny drivers, then just make open baffle speakers. That's what people generally in the world do. That's a common practice. If you want to hear them play well, have a big open baffle, let them play. But even then, you won't get much from tiny drivers like this in an open baffle below 80 hertz. Nothing, virtually. And because of that, because they drop off in the bass, that's why you hear that they sound very fast, much faster than comparing to, like, let's say a 2 or 3 way traditional bass reflex cabinet. Because there's no bass, then we hear or impression, the mind thinks that the sound is faster than it would be compared to having an equal amount of bass, deep material accompanying the music. And Lowthers do this exponentially. So let me just have a look at, let's go to the Lowther website and let's have an example. The DX4 driver 8 ohm aluminum voice coil version. You can have different voice coil versions, and actually when you go for different impedances like 8 ohm versus 16 ohm, aluminum versus silver, these curves look totally different. So eventually, but even among Lowthers, you can find like very big differences, but this is like what I would say, which is like a typical Lowther sound. That's what people associate with this kind of profile. So basically, between like 150 hertz to, what is this, 5 kilohertz? You know, not 5, just like 1.4, 1.5, 1.4 kilohertz. So 150 to 1.4, it's roughly like 100 dB per watt meter efficient. And then by 2 kilohertz it jumps up to 105 dB efficiency and keeps at it until, what is that, like 4 kilohertz. So basically we are seeing that we are getting like a reverse BBC dip. So it's not a BBC dip, but a BBC bump. So the exact reverse of the BBC dip. So the BBC dip is when you have in the upper mid-range, lower high frequencies, or maybe even the high frequencies, you have a couple dB dip. So it's a little bit lower than flat. That makes the music much more listenable on the long run, much less listening fatigue. And now with the Lowthers you have the exact opposite. So for these frequencies where the ear starts getting really sensitive, so our ear is most sensitive between 2 to 4 kilohertz. And 2 to 4 kilohertz region, here we have 105 dB efficiency. So it's 5 dB more efficient than in the lower mid-range and then upper bass, mid-bass. And then when we go go to the lower parts of mid-bass and deep bass, then it just drops off a lot. But I would say this is not what you will get in a real life speaker. It will tremendously differ. This whole range, like below 200 hertz, can widely differ based on what kind of cabinet you are using, so don't take this as granted. But when you see a graph like this, then you will know, now already you know, this is your signal that you are going to be challenged by creating a cabinet, and you are going to, that can load your room with bass. And when you have this is a sign, a sure sign that the loudspeaker will have tremendous variability between what kind of rooms they like or they don't like. So when you have this, then they will just like certain kinds of rooms. And if you move to a different place, then maybe the bass will disappear completely. And then you put it back to your previous room and you have fantastic bass. You can listen to church organ and it just has fantastic weight and awesome. And so this is the indication that you can be prepared for that. That if you have your louder based speaker and you have wonderful bass, excellent, and you are planning to sell your home or move it to a different room, you can prepare that you will, there's a good chance that you will completely lose the bass at all, and then you will have to just start with a very different loudspeaker. So, but we're not done yet. So between the 2 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz we have 105 dB efficiency, which is like ridiculously high by any standards, but it doesn't stop there. Between 4 kilohertz and something like 8-9 kilohertz we have an increase again, and this is the 110 dB line. So at like 6 kilohertz it's 110, I mean 112, 112 dB efficient, which is brutal. So that's equivalent to 100% efficiency. So it means that at this frequency 1 watt power delivered by the amplifier will turn into 100% sound pressure. The efficiency is 1, so it's 100% efficient at these frequencies. And then when we go there, the efficiency has dropped to like 20%, and here it dropped to, what is that, 100, it's like about 6-7% or so. So what this feels like in real life, it gives you the impression of extreme speed. And that's because when the majority of the happening is here between like 100 hertz, 150 through like 2 kilohertz, that's when like people normally speak. That's where normal speech is, normal communication, and most of the sounds around you carry this weight. And when we go higher than that, those are just those components that when something happens, like someone is snapping fingers or playing an instrument, or the lady sings a high note, that's when we start hearing these frequencies. So these are extraordinary frequencies, like extraordinaire, just like an addition to the music. So when we are climbing up the crescendos and all the emotional impact happening, but all the bread and butter is happening in the 100 hertz to 2 kilohertz region. And my experience when with this curve, how does it feel like? I will give a very nice representation for that. I think most of you or some of you know about the Rhythm speakers. This is the company, and now they have, like, I think these are more like the modern ones. I never heard these, but I heard these several times, and these have this quintessential louder sound. And the first time I heard them was with José Carreras is singing, he's singing, and Ariel Ramirez is the author, Misa Criolla. So this is a really wonderful piece, and if it's very high quality, very nicely recorded, beautifully recorded music, and it's just an experience to listen to. And if you happen to listen to with a louder driver, it will be a shocker, because the way like the Rhythms represented them was like Carreras is there in the room singing, but not in a way singing that you would think that you hear like any of the singers like singing through reproduced to like a focal system or something like that. No, not like a reproduction type of singing, that like kind of like a recording mimicking live, but that kind of realism when you have a real opera singer like Carreras really standing in the room. These guys have that kind of power, that kind of delivery, like Carreras is there. And when he is going like between his normal voice and letting it out, the dynamic difference between them is as extreme as a real opera singer's dynamic range, which is not there on most recordings because we put a lot of compression in there. But because of this this extra heap there, it gives back a little bit of that compression. So the recording compressed the dynamic range, but the louders are basically the 2 kilohertz on up are acting as a dynamic range extenders. And it's like in the case of the voice of José Carreras, it really sounded like when he opened up, I had that experience that the dynamic range he's covering is like a live opera singer in your room standing 2 meters in front of you, letting his voice out. And I can relate to that because my grandfather was that kind of singer. He was probably, well, not probably, he was one of the most phenomenal singers of the 20th century. He was not recorded, that was really sad, but he was an incredible talent. Why wasn't he recorded? That's a very, very long story. Maybe I will share it on his upcoming birthday, which is May the 20th. It's not really upcoming, it will be a while ago, but I mean a few months away from now. But actually my grandpa, he was my mentor, my first audio mentor and my first inspiration, teaching about music, teaching about audio gear, how do we listen to stereo, how do you set up your speakers, what to look for in music. He was a classical musician and like a professional classical musician playing in an orchestra. But that wasn't his daytime job. He was a brilliant engineer, and as people have noticed often, that mathematical talent and musician talent goes hand in hand, and extreme mathematics talents tend to be extreme musician talents if they explore music. Like my friend Taltos, he's a widely brilliant mathematician and he's a widely brilliant musician at the same time. So it's not a unique phenomenon, and I have like 2 of them in my life, basically 2 such extreme talents. And that's why I can say that I heard him many times like singing next to me, like I'm here, he's next to me singing, or in front of me across the table, and it's a shocker. It's not like what you hear in an opera. Wow, that was amazing. Even if you're in the first row, if you sit in the first row, you listen to the singer, to the tenorist or the soprano, that experience is nothing compared to you are in your home and they are singing at you. So when you are in such an intimate range, then it feels like a physical assault on your body. And it's not just your breath is taken away, but your heart skips a beat when they open up their voice. It's like a shock, like nothing. And for me, that was something, these experiences with my grandfather, that created these well, how to say, I have really difficulty putting these experiences and sensations into words, because we don't have common words how to express things like that, because these things are not massively explored by billions of human beings. We are not talking about it on a daily basis, so we can't really communicate it. So it's trying to describe colors to people who see monochrome. So now that's my dilemma right now. So I had these experiences in my childhood, in my young age, and then I was an adult when my grandpa passed away. So I got to experience like 20 plus years of exposure to how music, how art feels in your personal space. And that's what I want to reproduce with audio gear. And of course you cannot reproduce it if the original musician who was recorded cannot deliver it. Recording won't deliver it either. But there's tons of recordings out there which have amazing singers, amazing musicians, and whatever the talent is in the music can be extracted. And for one, Lowthers are just amazing at extracting human voice, but actually this is a little bit of a trickery because of this extreme high efficiency, and actually after a while you will get a little bit jaded, because the rest of the spectrum is not as efficient as the highs. So if everything else was as efficient, it would be heaven, it would be the last speaker you need, but we have a problem here because of that. So that's why it will give you an experience with vocals, with opera singers that you won't get with any loudspeaker that's not like in the ultra efficiency range. So this will give you a taste of the ultra efficient speakers, but as you can see, they are not as big as a double-sized refrigerator, which also means that they cannot deliver the bass at that efficiency as like a voice of the theater loudspeaker does. So it's just like we can't get around the laws of physics. And so going back to other louder speakers, if we have different voice coils, like the same driver, look at that, with the silver voice coil, it doesn't have that extreme plus at the vocals. I mean at the high, well, not the vocals are still here in this range, but at the very high extension it doesn't climb over 110 dB. So you see it's a much more benign, doesn't ring as much as the aluminum. And if we go for the 16 ohm version, aluminum is still kind of very much out there. How about the silver? It's kind of it's still very much out, but it gets more evenly distributed than what we see here, right? Or even that was just like here. So here we have the two big double hump, and there it's more even. And however, there's like other louder drivers like the PM6A, and in the 8 ohm silver version, I think this is the one that my buddy Charlie had in his Edgar horns. So the late Dr. Bruce Edgar designed a rear-loaded horn for him, and he used this driver for that. And look at that. So this one doesn't have that typical louder curve where the highs go off the rocks. This here, like the high frequencies are at the same level where you have like the 150 hertz. And you have like the lower mid-range and the upper bass. These are the regions which are dipping a little bit. So it does have a little bit of a leaner sound, but it has the mid bass riding high where the highs ride, and that's how Charlie's louder horns sounded. They didn't sound like, they didn't have that louder shout. Actually, they had a tiny bit, tiniest bit, which could be cured, and we did cure. And in the next video I can share about that, how you can do it, but it didn't sound like this. So there, because of the horn loading, it was really powerful, even down to, I think, about down a little bit below 40 hertz, maybe even 30 hertz. But it was absolutely phenomenal sounding loudspeaker, and it still had that impression, that the speed and everything that comes with the louder, but without the shout. And now what Paul was telling about is that he, changed over to the SB acoustics driver. I found that Madisound, they have this driver. This is it, SB20 8-inch driver. And when we look at the specs, you see it's an 8 ohm driver, and here, this is what I wanted to show, because with the louder, we have seen that here in the highs it was really off the charts. So what we have here instead is that between the 100 hertz region and the kilohertz region, it's about like 92 dB average sense efficiency, about 92 dB, and then it climbs a little bit, like 2-3 dBs, while the louder climbed 5 dBs. So that's, we see that there's like a magnitude difference between the two. And then for the high frequencies, yes, there's an additional climbing, but it's only like, if you look at this region, if we average it out, the climb is like a 5 dB climb and not 12 dB. 5 versus 12, massive difference between the two. And you see, this is only the on-axis response. So if you go the off-axis, you see the green and the red. So basically how these will average out if you don't toe in your speakers. So toeing in is when you make them face more inwards. So like the front is not facing straight, but they are facing like at you. So that's like the most toe in when you have them facing in your ears. And that's two things that you can do with your speakers. Try it out by all means. One extreme, have them face at your ears, the other, point them straight. Of course you can do anything, you can cross them over, etc. But if they have like big problems, maybe just like toeing them in so much that they cross each other, like with clip speakers, often that you can make them work like that. But if you have to cross them over, it means that there are some problems with the crossover, some problems with the speaker itself, because you should not, then you have to compensate for really serious problems. If you have normal speakers and you work with normal rooms, then you might need to toe in your speakers to optimize them for your room and your listening preferences. And these are the two situations which I recommend for everyone to be familiar with: zero toe in and toe in each driver to face each of your ears, and experience what's the difference between them, what is it you like, and then usually the optimal position will be between these two extremes, like straight or pointing at your ears. And usually, if your room is good, then when you have a curve like this, then if you just have them straight, that will give you a balanced sound. If you have hearing damage, then you need to toe them in. But if you don't have hearing damage and the curve looks like this, if you have them perfectly straight, then this will, at your listening spot, will be relatively flat. And so that's why, as Paul said, he's experiencing a flat, he described it as a wider frequency bandwidth, because it's like those frequencies are just produced by the same efficiency, roughly the same, and that gives us the impression that it's wide bandwidth. And of course you also see that in the bass it doesn't drop off as much comparatively as the Lowther did, which means that it will, if you put it in the same cabinet where the Lowther was, it's going to give more bass, higher quantity, not necessarily better quality, but higher quantity of bass in the same cabinet, in the same room, when we have this type of curve. And what I wanted to share is that what Paul shared with us, that the compromise with this is the lower efficiency. So you are not getting as efficient sound, as much dynamic range, but the deeper bass, it gives it like better solidity. So like if you have more bass and quality bass, then it makes it more solid. It gives it like a grounded realism type of feel to the sound. And when you have high efficiency in the high frequencies, then it will give it like a transparent, ethereal kind of sound. And if it's only in the highs, like here, then it will be like a very kind of like angel singing. And when you can get the rest of the range at high efficiency, then that will sound like normal people, like we are not even listening to a stereo. And at first, when people listen to very good ultra efficient systems, their first impression is that this is nothing special, it just sounds like life. Because what most audiophiles don't realize is that we are used to gimmicks from sound. There are certain cues that trigger our brain to feel that this system sounds special. And when you have that feeling, in the beginning you crave that because we want special, we want new, we want excitement, but on the long run your brain will figure it out that that's some distortion, that's some kind of alteration, changing how it sounds in real life, and ultimately you will get bored with it. But when you have like extreme efficiency all across the board from the lowest lows to highest highs, then this will sound like, okay, this is like you talking to me or singing to me or getting your guitar playing there. It's perfect, it's wonderful, but a lot of the audiophiles won't even, you know, blink at that, just playing a guitar. But oh, I've recorded it and now playing on the stereo, it's wow, it's much more interesting. But if your stereo sounds now really like live, then I have to tell you guys that it will initially feel as a disappointment. And when you've been listening to it like for an hour or longer, after that it will turn into hardcore addiction. And then you can't even imagine listening anything else than that. So that's why like really ultra efficient systems are really kind of a tough call, because you can get spoiled by them very badly. And I've got comments again that please János, share the exact dimensions for your Voice of Lancelot loudspeakers, which are these really high efficiency speakers. But I'm not sharing it, because all this channel I have is to transmit you the knowledge to put together a system that can drive a loudspeaker like that. And you have to be ready that you can calculate the exact dimensions and build it for yourself. Because if you are in that stage in your life that you need dimensions and exact plans to build a loudspeaker, then you are not ready yet for the Voice of Lancelot, and it will be a disappointment for you. And I have, like for example, there's Edward Brockman. He also has his channel, and he built his Voice of Lancelot, and he built his own version, and he has his system which is ready for it, and it's a massive success for him. He's tremendously enjoying it, and he took his own spin on it, took it on his own direction. And that's what I want to instill to all of you, that when you build your dream system, find out what you want in your heart, where you want to take it, and take it there. If you just take like some advice from me, no one ever takes 100% my advice. They okay, I take this part, I get this speaker, but no, I have this amplifier or use this kind of cabling. And if you just do it that way, you just go with the convenient facts, and which seem harsh on you or you don't like, you don't, then it's a recipe for failure. So that's why I'm not really giving like a verbatim exact something so that you can replicate, but I'm giving you the knowledge so that you step by step you can build it up and you can get there. And also very, very important that when you want to get there, it's not on me, not on János 100%, it's on you 100%. You have to go and look for knowledge. You have to look at books. You have to look at online forums. Work on it. Work your ass off. That's what I did. I didn't just build my system like that. It was 10,000 hours plus of research behind that. And I cannot just give it to you by just giving a few blueprints and then you replicate it and you are done, because that's not how it works. You have to match it for your room and your line AC conditions, the parts you can get in your country, which can be totally different from what I can get here. Because I don't think I ever met anyone who has access to the same parts that I had here. And that's why you have to just get the knowledge and then based on that you can progress on the road. And these speakers here, Legrand, they are not the best speakers in the world, but I took my time to build these. I didn't need this for myself. I could have bought another pair of my speakers down here in this room and listened to them, but I thought, well, why not? So I built them, I have them here, but I built them with the purpose to show you speakers that will allow you to develop your amplifier. There's the amp on the corner, and the rest of the system. And when you advance them with these speakers, they will respond you in a positive way when you go in a positive direction. And if with your amplification or sources you go into a direction that takes away from the path of the voice of Lancelot, these speakers will report that to you. So the most important part of these speakers, the function, is that they are reporter speakers, that they are milestones and guides for your journey. And they are good as a beginner speakers, like a first project to just get started, not very expensive, relatively cheap drivers, and it just like gets your skills on and allows you to advance on your path with amplifiers, like optimizing amps that sound good there. And not just the amps sound good with these speakers, but they sound good by themselves. So these will report whether your amp is a good sounding amp or a bad sounding amp. I think that's the easiest way. And it's not just, I see, when I say these things, I can see the billions of comments I'm getting. Oh, János, there are tons of good amps, and they show that these are rubbish. Of course, there are very different philosophies and strategies. How can you put systems together? And when you have amps that you plug into these speakers and it sounds rubbish, it will also mean that if you use those amps with the voice of Lancelot loudspeaker, it will sound rubbish too. And not necessarily because the amp is rubbish or the speaker is rubbish, but because their philosophies clash, they don't match. It's kind of like if you want to be dancing, you need dancer shoes, and if you are a diver, you need divers, the diver's boots, the lead boots, because if you are like a deep diver, if you're a deep diver, you put on your dancing shoes, won't help you. And if you're a dancer, you put on the lead boots, won't help you either. And not because there's anything wrong with the lead boots or dancing shoes, but you have to use them for the right purpose. So I think now I went totally off track with this kind of thing here. There's one more thing I want as a closing to share, is that when we, where are we? Going back here to the SB Acoustics driver, going up, there you go. You see, magnetic flux density. So this is the number that tells how strong the magnetic field is around the voice coil. So this is basically the motor's strength. So this is the number that tells you how strong the motor is. And this is the number that will also tell you how expensive the driver is, because when this number starts to climb up, then the driver becomes exponentially more expensive. So basically, for most of the drivers that you have, like two-way speakers, three-way speakers, the drivers they have are usually like 1 Tesla or lower, so like 1.0. Then you have tweeters in them, they can go like 1.2 Tesla, 1.4 occasionally, but that's general. So you can expect like 1 Tesla flux density for a normal driver, 1 or less. And when you have these high efficiency drivers, the single drivers, then they start at 1.2 Tesla. And this is the lower end. For louders, it's like 1.8 Tesla, that's the weak louder, and they go like 2 Tesla. And that's it. So right now, I'm going to stop here because we are taking our time, but we are continuing the Tesla investigation in the next episode. Bye bye.